Now, the next session is particularly interesting, and it falls on the theme that began really with Minister Philpott yesterday morning, and that is really beginning to look at opportunities amongst Indigenous communities across Canada, but also getting a better perspective on infrastructure in the north. So we're very fortunate today to have with us the Honourable Robert McLeod, who is Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance in the Northwest Territories. I'm also particularly pleased that Plenary has kindly agreed to sponsor this session. So I have Sia Kusha here with us, who's the Group Head of Project Development and Partnering with Plenary Group to introduce this session. Thank you again for joining us. I think you'll really enjoy this next phase. Thank you. Sia, over to you. Thank you. Great.
Good morning, everyone. It gives Plenary distinct pleasure and honor to introduce our next keynote, Minister Robert C. McLeod. At Plenary, we pride ourselves in bringing innovation and innovative solutions to the infrastructure market, both in social and civil sectors across North America. And it is very interesting to have had the opportunity to review some of the work that the Minister has done in the Northwest Territories. Minister McLeod was first elected to the 15th Legislative Assembly and a member of Inuvik Twin Lakes. He was re-elected in October of 2007 to the 16th Legislative Assembly and was acclaimed in 2011 as a member for the Inuvik Twin Lakes during the 17th Legislative Assembly. In October of 2016, he was re-elected to the 18th Legislative Assembly for the fourth term. Minister McLeod has served in several other key positions and key functions, cabinet portfolios, including the municipal community affairs, as well as the minister responsible for infrastructure. After Minister McLeod has completed his speech, he will be joining Mark for a brief Q&A and further discussion. We encourage you to continue to use the app and the website to provide questions for the minister, such that not only Mark can have his go with the minister, but certainly we would encourage all of you to ask any questions that you seem appropriate. Minister, please join me in a round of welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the importance of infrastructure investment in the growth of the Northwest Territories. The Government of the Northwest Territories, or the GNWT, has recognized the opportunities public-private partnerships can bring to help the government address its current infrastructure deficit, which is currently around $3 billion, and other key strategic infrastructure projects that would help stimulate our economy and improve services to our residents. In 2011, the GNWT approved a public-private partnership policy to start advancing the use of P3s for larger infrastructure projects in the NWT. Because the GNWT is a consensus government, the policy has a robust process convention that requires meaningful and formal consultation with our regular members of the Legislative Assembly to ensure political support is obtained prior to advancing a project to the procurement process. So for those of you that don't know our system, we have 19 members in our consensus government. We have 7 cabinet members, and we have 11 regular members or members on the other side. So we're always at a minority, so it's always important that we work with our regular members to try and advance a lot of the initiatives of the GNWT. And if they don't like it, they can vote you out tomorrow. The principles of the policy are, however, the same as one would expect to ensure the successful delivery of a P3 project. These include a fair, transparent, and accountable process. A high value for money is achieved over the life of the agreement with appropriate consideration of risk transfer, opportunities for innovation, revenue generation, and community issues. And of course, the private sector partner receives a fair return on their investment. I'm happy to report that we have successfully used this policy to advance 2 P3 projects in the NWT. On November 3rd, 2014, the GNWT signed an agreement with Northern Lights General Partnership to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the 1,300-kilometer fiber line through the Mckenzie Valley. The construction and operation of the Mckenzie Valley fiber line will help support economic growth and diversification in the NWT, and as Inuvik is geographically gifted to transmit and receive data from satellites in geosynchronized orbits, it will facilitate expansion of the Inuvik satellite facility. It will also provide innovative program and service delivery opportunities to communities in the NWT. The project will provide a key opportunity for NWT businesses to participate in the global marketplace. The Mckenzie Valley fiber line route is within an area of discontinuous permafrost in the southern part of the NWT and areas of continuous permafrost in the northern part of the NWT. In addition to over 450 water crossings, the route also has to be mindful of areas that provide habitat for a wide range of wildlife, fish, and vegetation species. Since reaching service commencement in August of this year, we have 2 local internet service providers utilizing the system between the federally owned Inuvik satellite facility and the privately owned Canada Satellite Ground Station Inuvik. Agreements are in place with 3 international space customers and 2 research companies. The project continues to show great local, national, and international interest, and we anticipate to have new customers in the near future. On September 24th of 2015, the GNWT signed its second P3 with Boreal Health Partnership to design, build, finance, and maintain a new 280,000 square feet territorial hospital, double the size of the existing facilities that will offer outpatient and inpatient services, including emergency, medical imaging, dialysis, obstetrics, pediatric, cardio, and mental health department, as well as any day procedure and surgery suites. The construction on the new hospital started last fall, and we will see the current facility replaced by a new purpose-designed facility that will address patient needs and provide high-quality health care delivery for all NWT residents. Why did the government advance these projects as P3s beyond the positive value for money considerations? As a small jurisdiction, the GNWT has limited capacity to initiate a number of very large, complex projects at any time, and therefore does not maintain on a full-time basis the core project management and technical capacity to undertake this kind of high-risk work. The P3 approach allowed the GNWT to access the project management resources and expertise required for these complex projects. We face a number of challenges when it comes to planning and construction of infrastructure in the north. The foremost issue that a P3 component has to consider is the high cost of building in the north. The NWT is an extremely large landmass, roughly the size of France and Germany combined. And we remind that when we're asking the federal government for money, we tell them, if you want to allocate it per square kilometer, we're fine with that. With many dispersed communities which challenge our infrastructure system, our 33 communities require their own supporting infrastructure, such as affordable housing, water treatment plants, waste disposal systems, and recreational facilities. There are only 5 communities connected to hydro-generated power, and all of the rest rely on power generation plants in the community. Many of our communities are not connected to an all-weather road system. These communities rely on marine, air, and winter roads for annual resupply, including supply of bulk commodities such as fuel. The isolation directly contributes to a higher cost of living, as well as higher cost to develop and maintain critical infrastructure. The NWT in general also faces unique challenges when it comes to the development of infrastructure due to the scarcity of trades and skilled labor, short construction season, and transportation and energy costs, resulting in overall construction costs that are significantly higher than those experienced in southern jurisdictions. Being a small market means our construction costs continue to fluctuate due to linkages to the economic outlook in southern jurisdictions, particularly in Alberta, specifically labor and products, and their associated supply and demand within the construction industry directly affect construction costs for northern projects. If it is booming in Alberta, it is difficult to get a large project underway in the NWT. These challenges have led to some of our best northern-based general contractors to relocate their primary workforce to southern jurisdictions where they enjoy fewer market-driven risks and longer construction season. As we have seen with the Stanton Territorial Hospital Renewal Project, P3s can be used to mitigate these challenges by leveraging the buying power, financial capacity, project management expertise, and project delivery capacity of the private sector to transfer appropriate risks and achieve value for money for key public infrastructure in the NWT. Our economic outlook depends on our ability to develop the infrastructure necessary to support today and tomorrow's industries. This includes energy infrastructure that lowers cost, improves system reliability, and reduces environmental impact, communications infrastructure. Like the Mckenzie Valley Fiber Line, that changes the way we transmit and use information and allows the NWT to diversify our economy into knowledge-based industries, all-weather roads to make it easier for people and goods to travel between communities and reduce the cost of doing business. We also need to work with our communities to improve the quality of community infrastructure, particularly housing. Now is the time to invest in the potential of our territory. We have diamond mines both in operation and under construction. We have mineral and base metal projects in various stages of development. We have hydro potential and world-class proven oil and gas reserves. But with the downturn of the price of oil and the gas and other commodities, governments have to promote and foster this growth more than ever to keep our economy strong. We must also take advantage of technology made available through investment, such as the Mckenzie Valley Fiber Line, to diversify our territorial economy to better deal with the fluctuations that ultimately come with non-renewable resource development. The resource development sector accounts for nearly 40% of our GDP. By comparison, tourism accounts for 3.5% and fishing at 0.01%. Diversifying our economy is critical to providing opportunities for our residents, and we have begun that work in agriculture, fisheries, manufacturing, and knowledge economy to improve the possibility of our economic prosperity. However, for the foreseeable future, resource development will continue to be our path to stability, and resource prosperity is blocked by a lack of infrastructure. Nowhere is the economic link between infrastructure and mining prosperity as obvious as it is in the Northwest Territories. Long distances and challenging landscapes mean more expensive projects. We struggle to get our resources to market economically, and our infrastructure deficit is amongst the largest of Canada's subnational jurisdictions. Last week, our Premier spoke publicly about the fading dreams of the North as we see a re-emergence of colonialism. As reconciliation was a fact of life before our government, before it came to national prominence, from our perspective, real reconciliation requires that Indigenous people have both political and economic self-determination. This means that Northerners, through their democratically elected government, need to have the power to determine their own fates, and the practice of decisions made by bureaucrats and governments in Ottawa must come to an end. Decisions about the North should be made in the North. Northerners are innovative, self-sufficient, and resilient, and want to do their part to contribute to a strong economy. We need the kind of well-paying long-term jobs that come with sustainable economic development to achieve this. One of the ways we hope to continue to work towards this goal is through partnerships, a key element of how we operate. Government-to-government collaboration and partnership is an integral part of the North Foundation. All levels of government have an important role in ensuring future generations can thrive, and Indigenous governments are essential partners in shaping that future and creating opportunities and prosperity in their communities and regions. The Prime Minister talks about wanting to grow the middle class by making sure people have access to good-paying jobs that pay them well. Northerners want the same thing for themselves. We want an opportunity to grow the middle class that will create good, sustainable jobs for Northerners. And we have an opportunity to grow our economy and Canada's through the development of the strategic transportation corridors. We can do this through innovative financing and partnerships such as P3s. Transportation has always been the forefront of enabling Northerners to grow and develop our economy. Never has the role that transportation been more important to guaranteeing our future growth and prosperity than it is today. Today, I'd like to provide you with some details about a few strategic infrastructure being considered to help achieve the NWT's full potential. The GNWT and Cleacho government worked together on studies related to the development of an all-season road to Wati. The Cleacho all-season road will provide several benefits, including eliminating the existing winter road and problems we have had with warmer winters and limited access to the region. Increased access to mineral potential will increase investor confidence and drive exploration to continue developing the region's economic potential. The project was referred to environmental assessment on July 27, 2016, which is still ongoing. On January 11, 2017, the federal government provided conditional approval of federal funding for the construction of the Cleacho all-season road. The federal government will provide up to 25% of the eligible cost through P3 Canada Fund A request for qualifications. A request for qualifications, RFQ, was released earlier this year, and the government of the Northwest Territories has since reviewed responses to the RFQ and identified the 3 successful proponents who will be invited to participate in the next stage of the competitive selection process. The RFP stage, the timing of the RFP stage will be subject to progress on the environmental assessment process. The Mckenzie Valley All-Weather Highway project, if built, would run all the way from Alberta to Tuktoyaktuk, enable our territory to grow stronger and become more self-sustaining. The highway will strengthen connection between our communities and significantly reduce the cost of doing business in the Mckenzie Valley, where much of our world-class reserve of oil and gas are located. The Mckenzie Valley Highway is gaining momentum through innovative partnerships with Aboriginal community government and the federal government. The most northern section of the Mckenzie Valley Highway between Inuvik and Tuktoyaktuk is complete. This project will be the first all-weather road to the Arctic Ocean. It is funded in partnership with the federal government and is described as a project of national significance, recognizing the importance of the country's position on security, sovereignty, and economic development. The Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway will open to the public next week. And I invite you all to take an opportunity one of these times to come drive the Inuvik-Tuk Highway. It's absolutely a gorgeous road. The next priority segment of the Mckenzie Valley Highway is between Wrigley and Norman Wells, which has the potential to unlock vast petroleum reserves and connect communities to the all-weather road system. The Government of the Northwest Territories recently submitted an expression of interest to Transport Canada for funding to advance this project, including its individual components under the National Trade Corridors Fund. The expressions of interest was accepted, and the Government of the Northwest Territories was invited to submit a comprehensive project proposal to Transport Canada in early November. A P3 business case is also underway. The third corridor I would like to highlight spans the NWT to Nunavut's Arctic coast. The mineral-rich region of the Slave Geological Province and connection to deep-water ports in western Nunavut holds significant possibilities for a strengthened, sustainable partnership with industry and our government partners. The region holds world-class deposits of base metals, precious metals, and diamonds, and is a significant contributor to the NWT economy. Increased all-weather access will improve industry's ability to operate successfully in the north. An assessment of the economic feasibility and P3 potential of the construction of the Slave Geological Province Access Corridor is currently underway. Similar to the second project I highlighted, the Government of the Northwest Territories has submitted an expression of interest to Transport Canada for funding for this project under the National Trade Corridors Fund. This expression of interest was accepted, and we were invited to submit a comprehensive project proposal in early November. We have heard about the slowing forecast in resource development activity over the next 5 to 15 years and its possible effect on the NWT economy. With a flat revenue outlook, the GNWT will be challenged to sustain programs and services to make capital investments in future years. Continuing to make strategic investments in infrastructure to support responsible development is one way our government can promote economic growth and prosperity to all residents. To accomplish this, we need to continue to embrace innovative funding partnerships such as P3s. Thank you very much for your time.
That would be great. Where would you be comfortable? You can push those cushions aside if you don't need them. It's perfect. This is sort of like a psychiatric session.
Get comfortable.
That's great. Thank you very much. You know, the first thing is that for those who don't know, Robert McLeod is, yes, Deputy Premier. He's also Minister of Finance. He's also Minister of Municipal and Community Affairs.
No, not anymore.
I beg your pardon?
No.
No?
Environment and Natural Resources.
Environment and Natural Resources. Yeah. Well, then, do you have job opportunities for a few of my staff who wrote that down incorrectly? Because I think we find they learn better when they're actually sitting with people.
I thought you heard
things.
something from our Premier that I didn't.
That's possible, too. Would it be fair to say that you're also responsible for infrastructure, Minister responsible for infrastructure?
Well, we combined actually Public Works and Transportation into a new Department of Infrastructure.
That's great.
And Minister Wally Schuman is our Minister of Infrastructure now. So
that's terrific. So you've got quite a team there that are focused on this.
Yes, we do.
Your remarks, I thought, were really insightful. You know, I think for a lot of people, they don't have as good an appreciation for just how much is happening in the North. Clearly, there are challenges, but the reality is there's lots happening in the North around infrastructure development. And to be frank, Northwest Territories is leading the way. And you outlined a number of very interesting projects, both already in the market and others coming to market. So it's terrific. So I was trying to get a sort of a context for the conversation. It's been a few years now since devolution in the Northwest Territories, and I was wondering how that transition has been to date.
Well, I think we've done very well with the transition. As you heard in my remarks, our Premier has made some comments about the fact that decisions for the North should be made in the North, and with the recent announcement of the moratorium on oil and gas exploration off the Beaufort Sea, I mean, if you wanted to put a nail in the coffin of some economic possibilities for the residents of Beaufort Delta, you just did it. And what we want to do is we want opportunities for our people to prosper. We want to contribute to the economy. We want to contribute to Canada's economy. And we always say that any decisions that are made for the Northwest Territories, they affect the southern jurisdiction because that's where we get all our goods from. We don't manufacture many goods right in the Northwest Territories. So it does have an effect. I mean, Alberta's our closest trading partner, so it does have an effect on them as well.
I think that's really an important point because there is that interconnectedness that people don't often appreciate to the extent that folks like yourself would, because you know exactly the impact of those kinds of decisions. So good luck to the Premier and to yourself. Continue that, that discussion. One of the things that I think is interesting to folks in the room who are representing jurisdictions that are newly thinking about P3s, many are here from other countries in the world who are trying to put in place a P3 framework. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to how the Northwest Territories overcame the capacity and knowledge gaps at the beginning in order that it could actually move ahead with P3s.
Well, we have a Department of Infrastructure, and they got, we looked at different opportunities for going into P3 projects, and one of the advantages of a P3 project as well is it makes our money go further because you take on a public-private partnership. So I think we've addressed the capacity issue very well. We have a lot of good folks over at finance and infrastructure, and we've been able to overcome some of the capacity and start moving forward with a lot of the P3 projects.
It's work, though, right? Because you have to. This is a little bit different approach. It's a little more complex. And it strikes me that with the projects you now have in the market, you've clearly come up to speed very quickly, and you've launched some very good projects.
We have, and we're fortunate that some of the private partners came on board right away, and I think that helped. And then you tap into their expertise as well, right? And then they have a lot of capacity, a lot of expertise, so you tap into that. And it benefits our folks as well.
And I'm sure you know, while we're, of course, strong proponents of P3s, and you folks are as well, not everybody is supportive of P3s. I'm wondering if there's been any opposition to using a public-private partnership approach to infrastructure in the GNWT, and how you've responded to that.
Well, I'm not sure about opposition. Maybe a couple of regular members on the other side, but I mean, you get regular members that is just opposed to everything, right?
Right.
And no, we haven't really had much opposition. I think the fact that we're trying to make our money go further and we're tapping into the expertise of the P3 partners, I think most people see that as a good opportunity, because instead of doing one project using strictly government money, you might be able to do 2 or 3 as a P3. And that ultimate goal is to try to put people to work. And so we haven't had really haven't had too much opposition to it.
Well, that's really encouraging. And I know that the Deputy Minister of Finance is here in the room with us, so I'll be interested in your answer. But I'm wondering how the bureaucracy has, in fact, dealt with this changing approach in terms of infrastructure procurement.
The bureaucracy has actually come on board, and they're the ones that, we rely on their expertise as well, right? We make the political decision, but we rely on their expertise to bring initiatives forward to us that make the most sense and where we can get best value for money. And so they've adapted really well, and they've kept us up to speed. At the end of the day, political decision needs to be made. We process all the information given to us, and we make a political decision. So we've been very fortunate. Our folks have come up to speed very quickly.
And I also think you're blessed with some really fine public servants. We know the Deputy Minister of Finance, Sandy Kokotar, very well.
Yeah.
And he's just a first-class guy. That's a free shout-out, Sandy, wherever you are in the audience. You should appreciate it. Thank you. We've got some questions coming in now, as you can probably see. So maybe we can try and turn to some of the audience questions for a moment. So the first one is, are there initiatives that the GNWT has implemented to attract and encourage young talent to help build and expand northern infrastructure?
Well, we have the through our education, culture, and employment, they're working on trying to get as many people into the construction field as they can, and trying to skill. I can't remember the exact title of it, but it's they're trying to develop the skill for the young people of the NWT, and we're fortunate we've got Aurora College and a couple of smaller campuses that we're trying to track, and we have different ways to bring people up north too, and this might be going off the infrastructure project a bit, but if any of you out there know people that have gone to school, I think the NWT is one of the few jurisdictions that actually will pay back some of the student loans. Mm-hmm. So if you're a teacher fresh out of college and you want to move north, I mean, you got to give us the next 50 years of your life, but then we'll pay some money on that. But I think it's up to $10,000 they'll pay towards. So that's one of the ways we're trying to attract people. And then our own people, I mean, we want to get them to work, so we can bring forward a lot of infrastructure projects, and because infrastructure is the way that we're going to go now. I mean, with oil and gas, and I mentioned it as I was speaking, that slowed down. I mean, I grew up in the Bodell when oil and gas was booming, and there was nobody that wasn't working. People want to work, they want to contribute, but we just have to give them that opportunity. I don't think I answered the question, but
I think you actually did quite well. The other, it's interesting, a few weeks ago we had Christiana Figueres visiting us here in Toronto, and she was the UN, United Nations Executive Director for the Climate Change Framework Agreement, and was very active and actually the architect of the Paris Accord. So obviously we had a fair bit of discussion in town around climate change. I know this is an issue for you too in the Northwest Territories. So I'm just wondering what you see as the risks from global warming and melting of the permafrost for your infrastructure in Northwest Territories.
Well, there is a lot of risk, and I mentioned before we just did the Inuvik Highway. They did all the construction in the wintertime to try and help mitigate the effects of the climate change, because it is warming up in the NWT. We see climate change quicker than the rest of the country. I was just recently at a Ministers of the Environment in Vancouver a couple of days ago, and one of the jurisdictions there said that they lost, I think it was 2 or 3 feet of coastline in, I don't know, it was the last few years. Well, up in Tuktoyaktuk in the Northwest Territories, they lost 8 foot in one storm.
Really?
8 foot, 8 feet of coast.
Right.
And I wish I brought some pictures. I would have showed you the effects of climate change on infrastructure in the Northwest Territory. They lost 30 feet of coastline in the summer, this summer alone. So it is having a great effect. But again, our folks are pretty adaptable. I mean, we recognize the effects of climate change. We've been doing a lot of projects trying to mitigate the effects of climate change. We're designing our buildings and our infrastructure to help mitigate the damage that climate change can have on the north. And we see it with the pilings in the ground. I mean, the pilings are starting to rot and the ground's going softer, and you see it all over. We just had recently part of the hills just down from Inuvik slide right into the river, and it's never happened before. And it's minus 11 today up in Inuvik, and that's summertime weather for us.
Interesting. It's amazing how many climate change deniers there are around, but at some point...
Send them north.
Send them north, absolutely. One other question which I think is interesting too is, given the challenge of getting Alberta oil to the west coast, would the Northwest Territories consider an oil pipeline going north through the Mckenzie Valley? We
did consider it, and there was a lot of work that went into it. When they initially priced it out, I think it was at $8 billion to do a pipeline from, I think it was up in the Bodell down to Zama, Alberta, and it was $8 billion. And one of the challenges we have, and one of the things that industry always tells us, is our regulatory process. It takes a long time to go through our regulatory process, and that's one of the benefits we thought of having devolution, is we'd be able to address that and make it go a little quicker. Yeah. But they went to an environmental review board. They went for a hearing. It took 5 years to do the hearing. It was an occupation for some of those that were sitting on the board, and it took 5 years. And by the time they finished that, the pipeline price had gone from $8 billion to $16 billion. And then the price of natural gas went down, and it just wasn't economically feasible for the investors, so they shelved that. And now with the announcement that was made, and that scared off a lot of potential investors, which is unfair to us.
Yeah. Stay tuned. It may yet come around again, that issue. It's interesting.
It will.
You also spoke, I thought, very eloquently about the Mckenzie Valley FiberLink project. I mean, it's a great one from our perspective because broadband and broadband connectivity is so critically important. And it's wonderful to see this project because it really has led the way in the Canadian context. And there are a number of other projects, particularly amongst First Nations communities, that I think are about to happen because of what they viewed as a very positive experience in NWT, which I think is great. And congratulations on that front. I'm just wondering about, now that the project's in the market, in play, can you comment a little bit about your experience with it, its success? Did the project come in on time? Was it on budget? Is it a good example for others?
Well, it did. I think we ran into some challenges, I think, but they were able to address a lot of the challenges that they encountered. They had to drill 4 or 5 times to get through one water crossing, which kind of delayed the opening a bit. But they were able to meet all challenges, and again, one of the benefits of a P3 partnership where the investor actually takes on some of the risks, and I think that happened in this case. And there's still some issues that Sandy is working his way through, but we'll get through that. But I think for the most part, we're pleased with how the project went, and it went through a lot of difficult terrain, but we're pleased with how it went.
But I think that makes it even more impressive, quite frankly, because it does face that, and that's part of it, the challenge of the North. some of those issues are, in a sense, a bit larger or a bit more unique in the north. And if you can do it there, I think it sends a really important message to other jurisdictions that they, in fact, can, if they try hard, they can overcome all those challenges too.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we're pleased with how the project and the benefits it might bring too, because we've had, as I said, as I was speaking before, we had interest from a lot of international folks in trying to get, and the fact that we have a fiber line there, I think is going to speed it up, and we'll see them start coming north.
That'll be great. Let me ask you just one last question. Because the experience in Northwest Territories has, I think, been such a good one, there are a number of other jurisdictions in Canada that have not traditionally used the P3 approach in procurement, but are thinking about it now. And not least of which the Yukon, who we're actively engaged with as a council. And I'm just wondering if you have any advice based on your experience in the Northwest Territories for other jurisdictions like the Yukon who are really considering getting into P3. So,
well, I think in our particular case, P3s work really well for us because, as I said before, the investor takes on some of the risks, and it allows us to stretch our money a little further. And so I think it's been positive for us, and it's probably a direction that we're going to go in the future. And that's the advice that I would give to some of the other jurisdictions. I mean, you look at our neighbors there, Yukon and Nunavut. I mean, it's something that they should consider is that going into P3 projects. I mean, at the end of the day, there's got to be a revenue part of it for the investors, right? It just makes sense. But I think it's one that's worked well for us, and I'm pleased about the fact that we're allowing our money to go a little further than it normally would, and so that's probably advice that I would give them, and yeah, we'll just continue to move forward and try to get as many projects on the ground as we can. I was talking about trying to attract all of you up to the Northwest Territories, and as I was reading my speech, I was talking about all the challenges and how difficult it is to work up there, and I thought I should just stop there. But no, it is challenging, but it's also very rewarding, and the government of the Northwest Territories, we're open to partnerships.
Right. And I think for those who've been to the Northwest Territories, it is such a stunning part of the country. Right?
It's absolutely gorgeous, and I wish more people in Canada would come and see the Northwest Territories and not consider Canada's national park, because sometimes we get the feeling that's the route we're going, and you know, we want, as I said before, we have a lot of opportunities up in the north. We have a lot of mineral potential up in the north, and you know, we want to be in a position to develop a lot of that so we can contribute and put our people to work, because they want to work. We're not, and I think that's our goal at the end of the day as a government. That's why we look for partnerships.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I think that quite apart from the three successful projects that are underway right now, you did a very effective job at outlining other opportunities on the horizon. So I think whetting the appetite of folks in this room. Let's keep in mind that most of them are driven by opportunities to engage in new projects. So I think you've laid out a bit of an agenda there, which hopefully will really attract the interest that they warrant. So again, thank you for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. And I hope that the group here will share in that view and give the Deputy Premier a warm round of applause for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So good to see you, Robert.